Our journey through elementary school, junior school, and high school has led us to this moment. We come from many...
It is my pleasure to introduce the platform guests, and I would ask, as your name is called, to please stand and be recognized. First of all, members of the Board of Education.
Represents the time that people would no longer have minds of their own, but if they knew all of us, they would certainly see that this isn't true. No, 1984 hasn't been the disaster that Orwell predicted. We have all survived it, and here we are, graduating. And here I am again with yet another speech for you. But tonight is still a first, because I am here not only to speak to you, the members of the class of '84, but also to you, the parents and relatives of this graduating class. There will be many times today in which you will hear how proud this person or that person is of this class. However, there has never been a time that I have not been proud of my classmates. Lies in each and every one of you, and not just in myself. So to all of you, this graduation commemorates more than just individual accomplishments, but a bond of accomplishment that will always hold us together. Now I have one more thing to add that pertains only to you, the members of the class of '84, that have sat through any of my assembly speeches. This is my very last speech, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you.
4 years ago, this class began an academic voyage. We had before us a 4-year mission to explore strange new opportunities, to seek out new knowledge and new friendships, to boldly go toward the swimming pool on 3rd floor B-Wing. Eager and naive, we each set out with some manner of openness, curiosity, enthusiasm, and unparalleled readiness for challenge. Thus, we earned our distinction as freshmen. Now, we have changed. We have passed through a great variety of social and educational experiences. We have enjoyed competition, victories, and wild parties. We have survived arguments, defeats, and history classes. We have made earth-shattering decisions about occupations, about colleges, and about lifestyles. However sublime or supine our efforts, they have combined with the energy of teachers, guidance counselors, coaches, and fetal pigs to place us in the embodiment of the beings we are now, graduating seniors. And of course, we must thank the administration for its contributions, always full of sound and fury, as Macbeth would have it. But for all we've seen, said, read, and done, we have only been able to see, say, read, and do a minute fraction of everything. We live in a complex and troubled world, a world which we will never fully understand. Look around you. What do you see? I see birds flying high, rabbits frolicking low, people wearing funny hats and long gowns. I see society looking for itself, while mankind is still plagued with wars, crime, disease, and hunger. Felons stalk victims, drunkards drive cars, and famine-starved countries. The U.S. and the USSR can't even start to talk about ICBMs. Terrorism bursts from the Red Brigade, the IRA, the PLO, and Muffy's Maniacs. PR men hide the CIA and LDCs, and the English language runs amok with abbreviations. But there is hope for this world portrait. The Duke Antonio reminds us, life is a continuum of experiences, and learning never ends. Remember that this ceremony is not just a farewell to high school. It is more importantly the commencement, the beginning of a new independence. We shall now expand our learning from reality about the world, about ourselves, and about others. Nature's birds and rabbits continue their individual courses, and beyond these tasseled chaps, so shall we. But in doing so, we should never forget the legacy that East leaves us. The process of learning and understanding is something that we must always carry with us. With it, we not only can find ourselves, but more importantly, we can give to humanity some of the love and sympathy that it is missing. As youth, we are the future, the potential of the world. John Ruskin states, "Youth is the season of hope, enterprise, and energy to a nation as well as an individual. Seek out the beat of your own drummer, but remember that you are and always will be a part of humanity." Thank you.
I have been impressed by your enthusiasm, your spirit, and your boundless energy. And occasionally, I've been annoyed by your youthful impatience. But always, I have been inspired by the way you have learned to care for one another.
Keepers of that flame. Aloha. God be with you. Shalom.
Welcome to the class of 1984. These were the words we heard 4 years ago at our freshman orientation. At that time, a man named Mr. Lyons introduced himself and explained that our next 4 years will be filled with physical and intellectual growth, learning, and many new experiences. He emphasized the fact that we would only get as much out of Cherry Hill East as we put into it. As we sit here today, all of us knowing what we put in and what we got out of Cherry Hill East, our focus is now turned to the future. But for one moment, let's look back on our 4 years together and just remember. Just as our Olympic hockey team did in 1980, our freshman class pulled together immediately and made our presence known in Spirit Week. Our theme was the Dreamers of 1984, and what dreamers we were. But we weren't just dreamers, because like Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman Supreme Court Justice who was appointed during our years at East, we were achievers. We set goals, and we reached them. After a successful freshman year, we looked ahead with hope and togetherness, and like the Solidarity Movement, we were out to prove a point, and people took notice. In our sophomore year, we celebrated the Philadelphia Phillies World Series championship, and we became the first class in East history ever to defeat the seniors in Spirit Week. With all this good news, though, it was time for us to accept some bad news. It was at the end of our sophomore year that we found out that Mr. Lyons would be leaving us to further his education. Our junior year then marked a new beginning. We had a new principal in Mr. Terranova and new goals as as we look to the future past our high school days. Epcot Center opened, and it became another attraction for our senior trip. And we saw our first prom and the end of an era with the final episode of MASH. Finally, we came to school this year with a few things on our minds: our senior trip, our senior prom, a good time, and graduation. Our senior trip was great, and our prom was fantastic, and we all know that senioritis has provided us with the best of times. And today, we accomplish our final goal, graduation. The word graduation means end, but by all means, this is not an end, it's a beginning. To you, the graduating class of 1984, I can only apply and restate what I heard 4 years ago. You will only get as much out of life as you put into it. Good luck.
Dr. Barbell, it is with great pleasure and an extreme feeling of pride that I present to you the Cherry Hill High School East class of 1984. I am pleased to certify that they have met the requirements for graduation as prescribed by the state of New Jersey and the Cherry Hill Board of Education, and they are entitled this evening to receive their diplomas.
On behalf of the Cherry Hill Board of Education, I accept the Cherry Hill High School East class of 1984 and authorize its commencement. As you, the Cherry Hill High School East class of 1984, are about to receive your diplomas, allow me to offer the Board of Education's sincere congratulations.
1984. I am certain that your dreams will help bring some solution to some of today's concerns. Congratulations.
John Greg Schmerler, Jacqueline Needleman, and Carol Ann Clark.
At this time, it is my honor and pleasure to read the names of the ranking scholars, the academic leaders of the class of 1984. Bama Athrea, Gary Lawrence Waldman, Samuel Wu, Zenda Joyce Kuo, Michelle Fuchs, Dina Kravitz, Patricia Shore, Vasuda Lingaretti. Those are the ranking scholars, the top 1% of the graduating class. At this time, I would like to ask the class officers to read the names of the members of the class of 1984.
Edward Wu Lee, Richard C. Bean, Jr., Nava, Brian McDonald, Robert J. DiGiacomo, Amanda Grace Hansen, Yatsik Stefanski, John Carl Cordero, Lee Jamie Tiedrick, Christine Haydinger, Alan H. Stein, Stephen Michael Albert, Catherine Wilson, Karen Heisler, Richard Michael Trope, Patricia Kathleen Jones, Peter Alfred Trump, Scott Christopher, Amy Yermish, Emily Jan June, Jonathan Aaron Zarge, Mark Harold Bleckman, Diane Lynn Keller, John Edward Zeberlion.
Michael Kiter, Wao Kim, Thomas A. Fogelbach, Elizabeth Page, Hillary Rose Savitz,
Keith Silverstein, John J. Kim, Ling Lai, Cindy Barlam, Sean M. Reynolds, Robert P. DeAndrea, Tamara Jean Allen, Seda Mahmood, Michael E. Revens, Michael C. Hedden, Lori Watson, Susan Pam Geller, Ira Harvey Smith, Robert John Dilks, Margaret Mluava, Maxine Gus, Eric Michael Krugen, Kenneth Henry Jensen, Roberta Allen Love, Michael Weiner, Michael J. Lieberman, Beverly Sachs, Lauren Shikes, Karen Me Mariano, Leanna G. Griffith, Mark Spencer Verteber, Robert J. Badessa, Kristen Wickham, Juliana Curry, Augustine Garcia, Keith S. Kaplan, Jamie Naden, Rosemary C. Deliberato, Scott Moxie, Scott Nelson Brody, Michelle Pearson, Ellen Renee Gaber, Kevin Ira Mason, Michael Gallen, Denise Rosenstein, Tammy Feldman, Stephen Mazzagatti, Richard Chodak, Judith Misbin, Kimberly Bobby, Michael Paul Rhodes, Michael James Hannon, Irene Racis, Daniela Dawn DeVays, George F. Suetta, James R. Heggs, Jean Margaret Pipitone, Lynn Ann Greenwood, David Tomzik, Joseph A. Kish, Catherine Marie O'Neill, Cynthia A. Dolan, Lawrence Pizzi, Mark Jonathan Cohen, Anna O'Brien, Janine Blumenshine, Richard John Mangier, Jerry Gomez, Rochelle Ann Olmanson, Christine Craven, Robert Long, Mark Hadoff, Naomi Wolf, Amelia Perales, Kyle Richard Mason, Brian Dost, Lori Ann Gaffin, Michelle Drower, James Michael Zack, Robert Cohen, Melissa Charlotte, Michaela A. Beltran, Young Min Lee, Scott Allen Compton, Susan Zangi, Stacy Gross, Ronald Hansen, Cornell J. Fisher, Rashida McGeady, Alicia Kaufman, Paul Orlando, Keith A. Houston, Deborah Mawkin, Karen Heiss, Jacob Winograd, Edward James Hoffman, and Elisa Miller. Mary Catherine Denon, Shannon Michael Savitz, Robert Garrity, Lisa Ann Tacknoff, Rhonda Lee Haig, Michael Stam, Scott Lerner, Lavisa Sheik, Diane Rose Damiani, Nicholas Rocco, Jean F. Gallagher, Francis Yanatoni, Eve Dietz, Kevin Paul McDowell, Joel Allen Dubin, Nancy Negrelli, Grace Y. Chu, Mark Pagel, Edgar Shaw Ellis, Sybil Marie James, Lauren Sue Goldstein, William C. Stewart, Howard L. Feldman, Susan Rose, Elizabeth Wood Molnar, Frank T. Lieba, Howard J. Bresselier, Stephanie Lee Rickert, Karen Stacy Golden, Charles C. Tominski, David Troth Carey Jr., Melissa Libby, Barbara Gale, and Richard Welsh. James Joseph Doyle, Randy Jill Rosen, Lynn Marie Gallo, Jonathan Weisberg, Myron Boyko, Elise Michelle Pollock, Teresa Ann Jacobson, Matthew Young, Kevin Boltman, Jameel Welsh, Mary Beth Kosick, Robert Schwartz, Daniel E. Kahn, Deborah Williams, Carol Ehrlich, Jonathan Poole, Donald Joseph, Gila Vituri, Jody Gibson, Jeff Stollop, Richard Chandler, Linda Marie Sager, Janet Kim, Randall V. Siegel, Jay Katzen, Amy C. Lobel, Julie Lee Key, Christopher David Taylor, David Harrison, Larissa Slobodian, Jennifer E. Durr, Jonathan Tucker, Craig J. Abishar, and Michelle Jacqueline Whipple. Cindy Aileen Grist, James Nelson, Stephen Michael Garber, Natalie Kurz, Marilyn Janine Griffin, Mark Hines, Saul Akovitz, Christine Maglietta, Randy Melissa Rush, Todd Schoenwetter, Jeffrey P. Ace, Mary Christine Sherwood, Gladys Geringer, Stephen Paul Schlanger, Joseph Curcio, Susan Robin, Linda Jean Kanzler, J. Jen Peter Kim, Stephen Grossman, Robin Wasserloff, Susan Elizabeth Kunkel, Eric Lawrence Semmel, Michael Goldstein, Tina Schaefer, Ellen Lent, Gregory Turner, William Hoffman, Jill Petcove, Venice Clementi, Vince Lombardo, John DePena, Raven Peets, Lisa Berg, and Paul Whitting.
Bonnie McDonald, Maggie Cowan, Scott Oakes, David Charles Ezell, Teresa Matoza, Tracy Lee Haglin, Sean P. McIntyre, David Kramer, Michelle Ann Rosidi, Cynthia Cook, Michael McCoy, John J. Goldberg, Wendy Monroe, Carolyn Klein, Michael Yokas, John George Kinker III, Kristen Rodriguez, Deborah Friedman, Robert Peterson, Gary Albanese, Darcy Teibel, Michelle Belofsky, Joseph Carey, Christopher Colburn, Kelly Smith, Faye Rose Golfrad, Christopher Smith, Neil Iannone, Marianne Santos, Kelly Anthony, Greg Conrad Eubin, Thomas Roland Ambler III, Kelly Ann McKay, Gina Ficara, Greg Troutman, John David Ebert, Margaret M. Stephen, Sue Ellen Greenberg, C. Donald Detke, Stephen M. Wisham, Mary A. Borelli, Maya Desai, Joel G. Marsh, John Parker, Gina Marie Russo, Michelle Duclos, Evan Pilchek, Paul Daniels, Christine Ann McCool, Jody Lynn Black, Herb Spradlin, James Murray Copenhaver, Rashenda Manzo, Rochelle Chaikin, Kurt Slasky, Jeffrey Heiner, Leslie Levy, Valerie Kinzel, Michael Marini, Glenn Shuroff, Melissa Beth Krantz, Leslie Greenwood, Ralph Messino, James S. Barber, Jacqueline Martin, Stephanie Fury, Lawrence Stevenson, Robert Fulton, Lori Janine Richardson, Jill Therese Ferreira, Alan Cutler, Joan Marie Schaefer, Brenda K. Johnson, Stuart Lee Tucker, Eric Thomas Elder, Julie Skleroff, Maya Ahn, Dave Spector, Michael S. Jones, Kathleen Grace Thomason, Michelle Jeanette Harrison, Ross J. Presser, Thomas Joseph Boone Jr., Rhonda Lee Saviano, Virginia Flores, Thomas Montini, William Dolan, Linda Jean Slyman,
Dorothy Ann Bradley, Howard Simkin, Stephen Anthony Caron, Lisa Stilley, Kathy Kennedy, Joseph Brenner, William Michael Demsack, Tara Luongo, Susan Maria Lesky, Paul Whitting, Mark Raymond Berkowitz, and Jeannie DeFeo.
Keitha Rebecca Beekner, Robert Conrad Taco, Paul Bridgman, Rebecca Jean Yonker, Jane Kennedy, Stuart Weiss, Paul Anthony Forlenza, Corinne Maria Marrow, Jennifer V. Davis, Joseph Mertz, James F. Higginbotham, Lynn Ann Petronas, Claudia Ann Castley, Andrew Seligman, Glenn S. Gruskin, Deborah Messerman, Stephanie Fenster, Robert Siegel, Michael Barra, Andrea LaGrossa, Leah Marie Cascarina, William E. Linville, Edward Hendrickson, Colleen Shaughnessy, Melinda Suzanne Banks, Richard Edward Batt, Andrew L. Barraway, Sandra Colino, Lori Ann Brannigan, Lawrence Craig Rubin, Gerald Christopher Barrett, Sherry Lynn Purnell, Patricia Ann Astorino, Kyle McCann, Richard Thomas Conti, Janice Marie Polinsky, Jackie F. Denbo, James Rich, Thomas John Hempstead, Amy Allison Seddon, Karen Dillenschneider, David Simone, David Feast, Ellen Sinclair, Deborah Harrelson, Thomas Madron, Andrew Hicks, Melinda Mullen, Jonna Campilia, William MacArthur Moore, Jeffrey Gottlieb, Diane Marie Phillips, Susan Elizabeth Grady, William J. Whitman, Timothy Bush, Donna Marie Langton, Erica Ann Huff, David Michael Shockley, Mark C. Incalingo, Carol Louise Steiger, Michelle Harris, Matthew Celine, Edward Dominisak, Mary Catherine Rikuski, Carolyn Hartman, Timothy Joseph White, Carl Mogul, Tracy Ann Kurzak.
Stephanie Gail Shim, Todd Allen Rosenberg, Kurt Edward Hatter, Emily Louise Cedar, Jennifer Dollinger, Lawrence Price, Alan Harry, Wendy Mandler, Lucia Girambelli, Todd Rowland, Joseph Campolito, Jody Ellen Zion, Elisa Tanya Frederick, Andrew Iceberg, Douglas R. Hauser, Faith Erica Roberts, Letitia Ann Hill, William Thomas, Terrence Dolan, Maria Isabel Skirm, Crystal Michelle Chacon, Martin Rosmanis, Gerard Joseph Galanek, Cheryl Ann Yampel, Jamie Beth Aniloff, David Stewart Stack, Christopher Canarella, Karen Tracy Zeller, Eric Peterson, Maurice Duenas, Laurel Kathleen Parker, Pamela Ann Beeler, Joseph M. Zazu, Michael Scott Benson, Sarah Ellis, Noreen Cunningham, Hector Machado, David Dean, Margaret White, Colleen Ann Coulahan, Robert Joseph Schofield, Tracy Ann Franks, Lisa Ogan, John B. Dawson, Richard C. Terrell Jr., Lisa Flack, Wendy Jill Perry, Jeffrey Gerstein, Doug LaBrosse, Jody Lynn Spenline, Sandra Stoffer, Marlise Ellis, Robert McConnell, Kathleen Ann Cutler, Mindy Beth Rosenberg, Susan M. Marshall, Adrian Kevin Shaw, Stacy Don Shapiro, Carl Walter, Lisa Beth Strickler, Todd Piercy, and Christina Paul.
Karen Blumberg, J. Eric Channon, Christine Davis, Suzanne Macara, Jeanette Christine Bell, Joshua Samuel Lees II, Sherry Lynn Buell, Betty Ann Rosa, Lisa Ann Koshy, James Reynold DeRocha, Dawn Suzanne Brennan, Christine Tomades, Carrie Sue Anderson, Jeffrey Muir, Sharon Arzilowitz, Karen Elizabeth Lacates, Leandra Lippincott, John Edward Brown, Karen Marie Dunn, Michael Marriott, Elise Saltoff, Lawrence Morgan, Lisa Beth Rubenstein, Christopher Nazuti, Lisa Sherman, David John Mazouris, Karen Louise Carley, Diane Sullivan, Alicia Daniels, Lee Sharamsky, Laureen Marie Kemps, Bettina Coop, Patricia Carden, William S. Douglas, Nancy Lynn Gorman, Stacy Weber, Carol Ann Coyle, Jack Stevenson, Matthew Elizardo, Lisa Sidner, Brad Seiler, Joseph S. Peters, Deborah Lynn Wilkinson, John David Thompson, Carolyn Weiner, Neil Pober, Karen Pliska, Gary Band, and Cheryl Ramming.
Tommy Eastep, Melanie Sawicki, Scott David Taylor, Susan Pullock, Jennifer Ludwig, Janice Diane Devlin, John D. Wydra Jr., Veronica Giannicola, Karen Skelston, Kristen Santoro, John Brady Wildauer, Miriam Zelnick, Jody Suquet, Karen Ann Bessel, Locke H. Tran, Linda Fiola, Bernadette Kristen Robinson, Karen Ann Broft, Anthony Sorrell, Lisa Nicolazzo, Scott Campton, Suzanne Cohen, Sean Hoffman, Drina Smith, Lisa Stromback, Craig Goldstein, Margaret Longhorn, Robert Giorgio, Sharon E. Kelly, Heidi Lee Glansberg, Stephen Asnan, Tracy Ann Geis, Stacy Blaska, Lisa Yonker, Chris Wishart, Karen J. DeBello, Kim Lean Train, Melissa Jackrun, Robert Burton, Deborah Jean Maggart, Michelle Goldhirsch, Kim Shikes, Lisa Weinstein, Kristen Bush, Joan Donato, Sheila W., Suzanne Swirsky, Lauren Ornstein, Nancy Horowitz, Michelle Ostroff, Janet Clavins, and Elise Blazenstein.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the class of 1984 would like you to join with them in observing a moment of silence for a member of their class, Andrew Winston, who passed away earlier this year.
Mooney. Once upon a time, about 4 centuries ago, a group of students entered a typical high school in a typical suburban American town. 4 centuries later, they prepared to graduate and to enter the world as 700 individual beings. It was their turn to take over the world and do with society what they would. What would they do with it? Author Gertrude Stein once wrote of a lost generation. Well,
They were a sort of lost generation as well, though in a different way. You see, for the most part, their dreams for the future and for society involved keeping things just exactly the way they were. They were a generation of talent, of energy, of promise, just like any generation before them. However, it seems as if they thought they had to employ that energy and promise to be doctors or businessmen or engineers, just like Mom and Dad, to have a nice house, new car, caviar, 4-star daydream. What had happened to their ideals? They'd fallen into the trap of measuring personal success by material possessions. It isn't. Success is something you give back to your world. You future doctors, for example. Success is in seeing the patient heal, not seeing him pay the bill. Future lawyers. Success is in seeing justice done, not collecting the legal fees. The world this generation was inheriting was far from perfect. Instead of talking to people, much of the time they talked to computers. Factories and nuclear power plants disposed of their waste without even thinking about the life it killed. A violent crime occurred every 30 seconds. Were they going to be blind to this growing lack of regard for human life? Or were they going to try to change their world? As you've guessed by now, this is a story about us and our apathy. Educator Horace Mann once said, "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." Well, I tell that to all of you today. Let's commit ourselves to true, lasting success, not be remembered as the lost generation, the lost being our promise. If we don't tell ourselves today that we will better our conditions of life, then 10, 20, even 50 years from now, you and I will still be living in a nightmarish 1984. That's it. Party it up!